Welcome back to the Industry Podcast, where this week we sit down with Paul Hunton to talk a little bit about the film industry. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
All right, hey, welcome to the Industry Podcast. Today's guest is Paul Hunton. He's a film producer, director, editor, writer, and he's won multiple Emmys from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He's also director of public media here at Texas Tech and has seen multiple short films at South by Southwest, MoMA, NYC, and the Environmental Film Festivals. Oh, and he's got a viral TikTok to boot. So, welcome, Paul. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. You know, TikTok is where it's at. That's like where I get my most joy in creating content. So the filmmaking, having a film at MoMA and South by Southwest, those are great, but TikTok is the future.
I can imagine. So, tell us about yourself. What got you into pretty much documentary filmmaking or just filmmaking in general?
Yeah, so I went to school. I grew up, born and raised in New Mexico in a very small town. Went to college at Eastern New Mexico University, and they had a film and television program. And when I actually started as an English major, and I had thought about going to law school. But my whole life, I had loved movies, and my mom tells a story of like whenever I was 7 or something like that, we went to some film, and I don't remember what it was. We'll say The Black Stallion. And as we were leaving, I started like talking about the camera angles and stuff, and not just the movie itself, but like actually noticing the film and how it was being made. And she was like, "Oh man, he's really into movies. He's beyond his years." And so as I continued to grow up and stuff, I fell really in love with Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, which I don't know if you know who they are, but they're very famous movie critics, especially in the 90s. They had a program called Siskel and Ebert at the Movies, and it would come on after Saturday Night Live in our house and in New Mexico where I lived. And so my dad would always let us watch the first sketch of Saturday Night Live, and then I would pretend to fall asleep. And then he would fall asleep, and then after SNL was over, these movie critics would come on, and they just went at each other. Like they just, no holds barred, like this is my opinion, and I love this movie, and I love the cinematography, and da-da-da, and then the other one's like, you're an idiot, your opinion sucks, and they just fought it out, and then they'd shake hands and then go about their business. And like I was like, man, not only are they passionate about movies in ways that I am, because all my friends and stuff, I was probably 12, 13, all my friends and stuff, they liked movies, but they were just like, oh, that was cool. I liked the special effects or whatever. They didn't ever really get into like, hey, did you see, the way the scene was shot or the way the lighting was and all that kind of stuff. So when I discovered Siskel and Ebert at the Movies, I was like, man, these two dudes get it and love movies the way I do. And so I just fell in love with talking about movies, dissecting movies. And then when I was an 8th grader, I started shooting my own movies on a VHS camcorder. I was like, you guys are growing up in the right age because you have all of the digital tools at your fingertips to create high level, high quality films and content. And we didn't have that. I just had my grandma's VHS recorder, and I had no way to edit. And so we would have to shoot the film in order, and we would have to just hit the pause button. So we'd hit record. And then once the scene was done, we'd hit pause, and then we'd go to the next scene and hit record. And so you had to film it in order, scene by scene. Otherwise, because there was no way to edit. So you were like filming it. The only way to edit anything was just to rewind it and record over the last scene. So we started making these movies, and they were actually kind of like Jackass before Jackass was Jackass. Our friend Jared Cisneros, we just hit him with stuff and threw stuff at him, and like that was the movie. It was called What the Hell Just Hit Me. And we would hit him with something, and he would just turn to the camera and be like, what the hell just hit me? Not very highbrow stuff. But anyway, so we started making these films. Then we started writing actual scenes and scripts, and we started making more and more. And I was really in love with it. So anyways, flash forward to where I was talking about in college. Here I am, an English major, and I loved it. I love literature. My mom was an English professor. I love all of that, and I would have been a good lawyer. I love to argue. But finally, I got a job at the PBS station that was there. And I was like, you know what? Like, it is silly that I'm looking to be a lawyer when my whole heart and life has been pointing me towards film and television and creating content, making story. We didn't call it content then, but you know what I mean. And so I switched, joined the film and television program, got my degree in film and television. And then it was like, okay, what do I do next? And New Mexico has a great film scene, even better now than when I graduated college, which was 2005. And so I'm not that old. Anyway, which, God, 2005 was a long time ago. But they had a job board on the New Mexico Film website, which still exists. So if you're listening to this, you want to go into film, you're a student or anything like that, go to nmfilm.com or nmfilm.gov or nmfilm.org. It's one of those. And there's a job board. And I just applied to some production assistant roles. And this is where, here's some advice too, and this is tough because not everyone has this. I was kind of like trying to get jobs here and there. And then, as luck would have it, so my dad grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was best friends with a guy named Jay Roach, who directed all the Austin Powers movies, Meet the Fockers, Meet the Parents. He just did Bombshell, which was that movie about Fox News from a few years back. Big-time Hollywood director. And he just happened to be making a film in Santa Fe called Used Guys. His job was on this board, so I applied for it and then realized, oh, it's Jay. Like, it's my dad, So my dad shot him an email, and he hired me. And so I went up, moved up to Santa Fe, started working on that film. And then that film got shut down. And in the middle of it, it was going to star Jim Carrey and Ben Stiller. And it was a futuristic world where women ruled everything and men were bought and sold like cars. So it was Used Guys. And Ben Stiller and you're making a face. The movie never got made, so maybe that's why right there. But anyway, so the film gets canceled. So I just start bouncing around working on other films. And that really got my start. And then it evolved into I started wanting to make a little bit more money and realized that in the fiction film world, you really had to work your way up, and it took years. And I was looking for some sort of shortcut to make my own stuff. So I shot some documentary and created a production company to make documentaries and promotional videos and marketing videos, and I shot weddings and all that kind of stuff. But I started making these films for Crime Stoppers of New Mexico and the United Way of New Mexico, and they were just real stories. So I was like filming these great emotional scenes of people talking about their lives, and I just thought, this is great. It's just me and my camera. I haven't had to hire any actors. I didn't have to write a script. I just have to know the subject matter, and I can go create really great stories without all of that stuff involved that's in fiction filmmaking. And that's when I really fell in love with documentary filmmaking. So that was a very long rant, but that's kind of the journey to who I am now as a documentary filmmaker.
Well, it's also, I mean, that's great. You've clearly seem very passionate about this work, but that's another thing. You've won 4 Emmys. I can imagine that must have been crazy just to even win your first one. What was kind of your reaction when you won even your first Emmy and then kind of subsequent from that?
Yeah, so we had been nominated for a short documentary we did. And the Emmys are broken up in all kinds of categories, right? Like the ones you watch on television are the primetime Emmys, which are The Office and all those big-time primetime shows. And then they have the daytime Emmys, which are the soap operas and all of that. And then they have the documentary and news Emmys, right? So they're all broken up. So, like, the Emmys that I win are Emmys, but I'm not on television ever or anything like that,
They're
right?
still Emmys.
They're still Emmys. Exactly right. So I just want to make that clarification that the Emmys are a big, broad, it's not like the Academy Awards. Well, and the Academy Awards does it too. They have their technical ones that they don't film, that they just give out. So anyway, yes. So it's the documentary and news Emmys. And we'd been nominated for a short film we did on an artist here in Lubbock, and we had lost like 3. So the first thing was we would get nominated, and we'd be like, oh wow, we're gonna win Emmys, and then it was like, oh no, we're never gonna win. We keep getting nominated maybe 3 times, I think, and we didn't win, and it was like, oh man, it sucks. Like, we're always invited to the party, but we're never in. And so I had done a short film on a documentary on y'all know Stubbs Barbecue. Have you ever heard Stubbs Barbecue or seen the bottles?
Sauce, right?
Yep, they sell barbecue sauce. So Stubbs was actually a restaurant here in Lubbock, and then he moved to Austin, And then he unfortunately passed away. He had cancer, and he passed away in complications with diabetes and stuff. And he passed away in Austin. And then some entrepreneurs bought his brand and his likeness, and they've turned it into a world famous barbecue. You can walk into a supermarket in London, England, and buy a bottle of Stubbs barbecue. So anyway, he has this fascinating story of when his time was here in Lubbock. And one of the things he did is he worked with he knew this artist named Paul Milosevic, a very famous artist who does portrait work and all kinds of stuff. And Paul had done a drawing of Johnny Cash that he was taking to Nashville to give to Johnny Cash. And he was in Stubbs that day. And Stubbs was like, well, I want to go to Nashville and meet Johnny Cash. And so Paul was like, let's go. And they did this amazing like buddy road trip to go take art to Johnny Cash and also to cook barbecue for Johnny Cash. So I met Paul Milosevic, and he had all this footage. They took an old 8mm film camera and filmed the journey. So I did this short documentary about Stubbs through the lens of this one journey. So it's like the story of his life, but kind of told who he is through this one trip that he took. And it was great. Probably the best work I'd done up to that point. I was really proud of it. And I was like, okay, this is the year. And we get nominated. And we were looking at all the other nominees, and we were like, I don't know if we're going to win. There's a lot of great stuff here. And sitting in the audience, and they called it out. And I just remember like my life leaving my body and just seeing me sitting in that chair like, oh my God, I just won an Emmy. And then that walk up to the stage was just like, it didn't feel like it was real. I felt like it was a video game. Like it didn't feel like it was happening. And so gave the speech and everything else. And so we had also done what was the other one that year? This is sad that I can't remember what else we had won for. There were 2 that year. So what was crazy is we'd gone like 3 or 4 years without winning. And then in the same one, we had been nominated twice and won them both. And it was just like amazing. And so after that year, it was like, we're going to win every single year. We figured it out. We're amazing filmmakers, me and my crew, Texas Tech Public Media. And we were like, we've done it. We cracked the code. We're the best there is. And we went like 5 years without winning. And it was just like, okay, never mind. That was luck. Lightning struck. And then this past year, this is how, and so to answer your question and make this even longer is that first year I'll never forget. It was just like the most unreal experience of my life. And then by the time we won last year, I'm like, whatever. There was no ceremony. They just shipped us the statue, and I just put it next to the other ones and was like, okay, that's great. And so what I would say is like, what's great about it, and don't get me wrong, like it's not like, oh, this guy, what is he, it's amazing to win an Emmy. What I think I realized in that journey is that 5-year drought, I was like really depressed and down about the fact that we couldn't win again and that we weren't getting nominated and everything else. And what I realized is that an award isn't necessarily proof that you're good. It is affirmation that you're making good stuff that connects with audiences, but it doesn't mean anything to you as an artist and a filmmaker and the journey to do it. As long as you're making film, you're a filmmaker and you're doing great stuff and you should be proud of it. The award is an affirmation of the journey and the process, but it's not the end of the road. And so that's kind of where I am at with it now, is like, I would love to win an Academy Award before I die, but I also know now after winning the Emmys and everything else that it's like the journey is what's great. The art and making the films is what drives me. The awards are just affirmation that all of this is paying off in a way that's accepted by the larger public.
I can kind of see that, yeah. I'm going to ask one question, and then I'll pass it to Connor. And this is kind of a combo question because one of our members, unfortunately, isn't here, Miss Ellie Sonia. But she asked, and even I'm curious about it, too. You mentioned pretty much working with big-name actors like Jim Carrey and Ben Stiller, and even this big-time producer that you knew. But with that, what director / producer would you want to work with as a big filmmaker to work like on a big, let's say, Hollywood project?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, there's a lot of great filmmakers out there, and a lot a lot of people that I admire who are still working. I think I just saw that that Martin Scorsese is shooting his next film, and Martin Scorsese is amazing, and I love all his movies and everything else. And I think, wow, that is a really cool question. I like that question because it where I'm at in my journey now, working with a filmmaker, would be very different than where I was as a production assistant, getting people coffee and things. And I learned a lot in that. But I would say what would really, gosh, I would love to work with Terrence Malick on a documentary project. So Terrence Malick, he's a Texas filmmaker, works out of Austin, is sort of a recluse. His early films are Badlands, Days of Heaven. Thin Red Line is like my favorite Terrence Malick film. He's done so many great films, and he does them in a very abstract, philosophical way, and he looks at life and existence and time and all of these things. And he's done some documentary stuff, but man, he'd be awesome to work with. There's a lot of people who I would love. I love Ryan Gosling. I got to meet him at South by Southwest just briefly, like shook his hand, didn't really like introduce myself or anything, but his directorial debut was a year that I had a film there too, and so got to meet him. But there's a lot of people I admire who are doing really great things, and I feel like I'm drawing a blank on some people that I would love to work with, some smaller, more indie filmmakers. David Green out of Dallas, who did the Peach Dragon remake for Disney, but then also did a film called Ghost Story that's really good. His new one, Green Knight, was supposed to come out last year. That's about the legend, the Arthurian legend of Gawain and the Green Knight. He'd be an amazing person to work with. So there's lots of people that would be fun. The Ross brothers, who are documentary filmmakers, they'd be fun to work with, and who I know sort of. Anyway, all these people would be great.
All right, well, you mentioned earlier that you think TikTok's where it's at now.
Let's talk the future of content.
Let's talk the future. I want to ask you, what was it like? What was the difference between you already reached fame in a sense, winning an Emmy, and then you become TikTok famous. You went viral on TikTok. How are those similar, different? Tell me about it.
So the TikTok thing's fascinating. So my daughter, I was joking that like 2021, I wanted to make a year of like me making content for myself again. Like working for Texas Tech is amazing, and leading public media has been incredible, but there's a lot of like different restrictions and stuff, and we have people who give us grants. And so the way that I'm able to make content is sort of guided by like a lot of different things I have to think about, and there's a lot of stakeholders involved. So you have to like really try to work for a consensus. You can't just do what you want. So I was telling my family that I wanted to make 2021 a year of like me content, like the crazy stuff I used to make in college, the crazy stuff I used to make when I had the time and all that kind of stuff. And so I was joking that I wanted to make a TikTok too. And I didn't know much about TikTok. I didn't have an account, had looked at it briefly, and it had sort of overwhelmed and scared me. And so my daughter, after hearing all of that, was like, you know what? She decided she was going to surprise me and make me a TikTok. And she's a really good editor and stuff on her own. She's 15, and she does some really cool stuff. 15, she's 16. Anyway, she does some really cool stuff on her own. And so she edited this video together that was like a story of my life, kind of, and made an account and posted it and was just like, hey, help me out. My dad wants to have an account on TikTok. And it just exploded. And she had said by like, when she went to sleep that night, there was like 4,000 views, which was the most she had ever gotten on her account or anything else. And then by lunchtime, there was like 30,000 followers and 1 million views or something. And then she showed it to me after school and was like, hey, Dad, I made you a TikTok. And I was just like, is this real? Like there was like 50,000 followers and 1.5 million views or something insane like that. Well, then as the day goes on, as the next few days went on, it was just like, I thought it would stop at 80,000, or I never even thought 100,000, and it kept going and going and going. And so then it was like I was scared out of just like scared to death, because I thought, this is a platform. I have no idea how to use it or interact with. Like, don't get me wrong, social media, I'll figure it out. But it was scary to be like, I don't get to try to figure it out. It's like I got to hit the ground running and do an amazing job right off the bat. And so it was frightening, probably more frightening than anything I've ever had, like more frightening than winning that Emmy that night. Like it was so scary to be like, okay, I have a giant audience now that I have to entertain somehow, and I have no idea how to do it.
Okay. Well, we unfortunately have to wrap it up. So let me end on this question. What's one piece of advice that you wish you knew before graduating college?
One piece of advice that I wish I knew before graduating would probably be that you just go after what you want and do whatever you have to. Like, there were moments where I wanted to quit it all and not be in film and television anymore because I wasn't getting the right jobs that I wanted to be in. And I would say that the thing that has served me best is saying no to that and being like, every step in the journey is the right step. If it's in the industry, in the place you want to be, and it might change a little bit as you go, but like, don't be afraid. Like, a lot of times now, I think kids, just in the last 10 years, I've had people who come through and graduate from my class and stuff like that who think that they need to immediately be a producer or a director or like immediately have a great job in the industry. And it doesn't work that way. It is very much an apprenticeship model to where you have to get people coffee first. So don't be afraid to get people coffee. Don't be afraid to take that crappy job that doesn't pay much with a boss who's a jerk, but in the right mode, in the right, you're working for a media company, or you're working on a film set, or you're doing the thing that you want to be a part of, but you're just not the top yet. Take that job, do that work, because it'll pay off and you'll learn more, and really try to absorb the things around you. If you work for really talented people, take the time to be like, hey, can we go get coffee? And I just want to pick your brain about how you got to where you're at and how you do what you do, and give me advice on how I can work my way up here. Find people that are doing the thing you want to do, and don't be afraid to engage with them and ask them how they do it and where that comes from, and then work every day to reach those goals.
All right. All right. Well, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. Thanks so much, Paul. This was really eye-opening, to be honest.
Awesome. Sorry, I feel like I talked a whole lot, but I appreciate y'all having me on.
No problem. We appreciate you coming. All right.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thanks to Paul Hunton for coming in and talking to us about the film industry.